All right. Thank you for joining us on this last session. For a lot of you as founders and entrepreneurs, it's a bit of a mystery how to penetrate this world of venture capitalists. And so we're going to talk today about how to approach and build relationships with VCs with the outcome, hopefully, of getting capital for your enterprises. I think I was selected to moderate this panel because I have a lot of scars. I've raised probably $300 million in every way you can imagine through IPOs and follow-ons and private placements and debt and through a lot of angels as well. And it's never easy, but hopefully with the benefit of the expertise and counsel from this esteemed group, we can make it easier for all of you. Just a brief commercial, if I may, on ONWARD. So I have the pleasure currently to serve as CEO of ONWARD Medical, which is a neurotechnology company. We have technology that stimulates the spinal cord to restore movement and other functions lost after spinal cord injury and Parkinson's disease. And we're now commercial in the United States. So we got FDA approval about 3 quarters ago. And as of this weekend, we also have CE mark. So that's good news. And we're starting our pivotal study for our second technology as well in the coming months. So very busy times at ONWARD. If you haven't heard of it, please look us up. Okay. Now, with that over, I'd like to ask each of our esteemed panelists to introduce yourselves and maybe tell us a bit about your firm. And Celia, may we start with you today?
With pleasure.
Okay.
So I'm Celia Hart. I'm co-founder and general partner at Supernova Invest. It's a French firm. We have a long existence, but I would say we kind of started to be independent in 2017, although the history starts more in the year 2000. And so now we cover, investments from seed to, I would say, early growth. We manage about 800 million. We do quite a lot of medtech. And myself, actually, I came into this business a little bit by chance because I was more aiming to be in R&D. So I did a PhD in academia in Oxford, and then I worked in the biotech industry in Cambridge for a few years. Loved it. And the life took me just somewhere else, and I ended up, doing a bit of BD and an MBA. And in France, I stepped a bit upon this opportunity to start startups from scratch. So I would say my sweet spot, and I'll finish here, has always been seed funding, because we're talking a lot here about how to approach founders. So it's very much about first interactions with often founders who've never actually raised money before.
Thank you, Celia. Samuel.
Great. Yeah, so my name's Sam Scofield. I'm an investor at Good Growth Capital. We are a Charleston, South Carolina-based early stage venture capital firm founded by 2 women that wanted to, they were entrepreneurs for a number of years and felt like there was a gap in the market in really early stage technology with institutional capital. So that the general thesis of the firm is investing in transformative science and technology, typically investing in seed and Series A. We also do have a separate fund for pre-seed investments, often academic spinouts, and we follow on in our investments beyond the Series A stage. As I said, investor at the firm, been here for about 3.5 years and came in from life science strategy consulting, primarily on the biopharma side. And at my time at Good Growth, been really focused on medical devices as an investment area. Been a part of about 10 new investments and probably 20 or so total investments into companies. So certainly have had lots of interactions with existing companies. We have some portfolio companies in the audience, so good to see that. But also new companies as well. So looking forward to the conversation here.
Thank you. Bruce?
Thanks, Dave, and thank you to my panelists. I'm Bruce Roberts. It's nice to see everybody at this bright and early hour. And to give a few words on myself, I've been in the medical device sector for now 25 years. So from that vantage point, I've been able to see quite an evolution in the venture capital ecosystem, both for medical technology and for life sciences more broadly. I got into the sector through actually work that I had done in launching with several other partners in New York, a boutique investment bank and investment management firm called RM Global. And it looks like you can keep that date. RM Global actually has been in business for 25 years, and particularly in the last 10 years, we've been active as a venture capital fund manager and venture capital investor, both managing corporate venture programs as well as managing our own proprietary fund vehicles. That experience has given me perspective on the dialogue between VCs and entrepreneurs from both angles, both as someone seeking capital for my companies, as well as now allocating capital. The current fund that we are investing from into MedTech is focused primarily on clinical stage companies in cardiovascular, neuro, oncology, and immunology. And I certainly look forward to sharing more about some of the experiences we've had.
All right, thank you. So we have a well-constructed panel here with a lot of experience from both sides of the Atlantic. So bravo, LSI. So let's start at the beginning. A founder, entrepreneur needs funding. They don't know you, and they don't know anyone who knows you, so they can't facilitate a warm introduction. How should they get your attention? Can they email you? Can they call you? Maybe just explore some do's and don'ts for that initial outreach. What has worked for founders and entrepreneurs? What has resonated? And what has been really annoying and maybe turned you off or discouraged you from engaging with them? So we'll start with Celia again.
So you already cut the question, because I was going to say, if you can find indeed someone who can introduce you, that makes a tremendous difference. So if you don't, still try to find someone, because I think you may be attached to an incubator. You will find someone, basically. You should be able to find someone. So that's always the best way, is to enter recommended. Now, having said that, we do get a lot of companies who come to us cold. We do review the decks, so obviously the clarity of information and the right targeting is important. Blankets, email. We need to see that it's tailored to who we are. But generally, we will respond to that. I think as regard to the channel, it's a very personal thing. I think some people, personally, I don't like being called, but that's very personal. I've got people in my team who are quite comfortable with that. I prefer to have a bit of a formal email, which, details the main elements of the company's value proposal. Then we review it internally, and we have a process for that, and then we'll get back to the company. We always get back to companies. We always answer. Either we answer very quickly, no, because it's not in the scope, or we take a quick call, and then you have your chance, basically.
I would also say, I would echo a lot of what you said there. I think, Dave, to your question, warm introductions are obviously key if you can get them, and we appreciate that those are not necessarily always accessible, but it's not a function of, we don't want to look at companies that are coming in cold. It's just, we have respected networks that, there's a certain level of work that's gone into it. If it's coming to us, they understand our thesis well, they understand what type of investments we like to make. And to your point, we really want to make sure that, if you are doing a cold outreach, make sure that you're reaching out to the right people and with the right type of company. So we're seed and Series A. There's, you can probably find that on PitchBook or Crunchbase or even just on our website. So if you're a Series B stage company that's raising a commercial round, we're probably not the right fit. So definitely do your homework. It's very obvious when companies reach out and they haven't done that homework. It makes it a lot easier to, not focus on those. We're obviously, LPs are paying us, to see deals. So we want to see things. But I think that's definitely try and focus on that. And I would say another thing to do, which, for those there in the audience, you're making the right move coming to events like this, because I think, you can see people in person, and, we like to call it kind of like guerrilla marketing, right? You go up to an investor and introduce yourself and kind of develop that relationship, so that at a later date, once they're looking at a pitch deck, something of that sort, that they, recognize what you are, who you are, and what you're building. I think that goes a long way.
Anything to add, Bruce?
Well, certainly I think that any investment to attend a conference like this is well spent, because, as Sam mentioned, Dave, the personal connection, particularly as we've come out of COVID, really is a key to overcoming this, what is indeed a very, I think, critical wall where cold calling is just not going to be that effective. And I would add one other curious development that's made cold calling, unfortunately, even less effective, which is that people really are worried about cyber attacks now on email platforms, and there's a sensitivity about unsolicited emails that I've seen from recent cyber events, amongst people in my circle. That adds another layer of, if you will, wariness. Apart from clearly doing your homework on the focus of the fund, I would say that if you are going to endeavor to do a cold call or a semi-cold call, it might be a good idea to start not at the highest level, but actually with a junior person who's going to potentially take that cold call and to work your way up. It's obviously not perhaps seen as the easiest way, but it's probably a more realistic way to penetrate cold. Yeah. The other practical bit of advice I would give, if you're having trouble finding a point of referral, try to research whether the fund has a group of KOLs they work with. Sometimes those KOLs might be part of your network or an easier pathway in. And KOLs and SAB advisors matter a lot to us as fund principals, so we will respond to them.
Already some good feedback. I must say, when I think about approaching a firm, I'll think, well, I don't want to start with the associate. I want to go and engage with the decision maker. Why waste time with the associate? That's very valuable feedback already. Another thing that happens quite a bit, even for a more mature company and even in a banker-led process, we get set up with meetings with funds where we don't fit the mandate. And you mentioned PitchBook. I mean, we don't have subscriptions to PitchBook, and often your websites are inscrutable. You can't determine what your mandate is or what your investment preference are. It's almost like sometimes it's the more stealth you are, the more cool and exclusive you are as an investor, you see. So this is difficult just for an operator to wade through this. But what I'm hearing loud and clear is network it. And that network will help the founder to discern whether indeed your fund is a fit for their company and get you to the right place. So very clear. Was that a question over there? Or were you saying hello to me? Do we know each other? I wasn't sure. Go ahead.
We're looking for somewhere between a needle and a haystack, or needle and a haystack if that exists. So for us to go through 300 VC firms to see what your criteria is, that's our doing your work. I think we should just send it 300 VC firms. So, hey, we're doing a Series B. This is we think you and let you do your work, because otherwise, and on your point of the website, I don't know if the website's open for the entrepreneur or your limited partners, but we read your websites and we believe is, wow, this is this run to get my money, and it's invariably not. So I get to your point that is much better. I think has a great idea on KOL, the guerrilla marketing, but as a, when you talk for by the way, Supernova, I sent you a PowerPoint and you gave me back a recent response within a week. That was great.
Ah, thank you. I was worried.
I thought he was going to say something bad.
Sweet.
Nice. Well, the other thing is, when you hear no as a founder entrepreneur, often it's because your company does not fit the mandate, or you're just at a different phase in the life cycle of your fund.
Yes.
Right. So I think that's important to understand. It doesn't mean you don't have a good value proposition. It just may not be a fit for that point of time.
Yeah, and that's the biggest challenge because that's often one of the most important data points, but it's the most inscrutable. No one's putting on their website where they are in their fund cycle. Yeah.
That's right. So you just have to kiss a lot of frogs. That's just the nature of it. So let's say you don't fund an entrepreneur's company, but they want to stay in touch because they want you to fund them the next time around. What is the best way to maintain contact with you without being annoying?
I think, well, first of all, and we try to be clear in our answers. I mean, sometimes it's really not in our target and we will probably never fund the company. And I think if that's the case, there's no really point coming back. But as you said, I mean, sometimes it's a question, often for us seed funders, it can be a question of maturity of the fund, and maybe we can come back to that question later. But often it's a question of maturity of the company. As seed funders, we see a lot of ideas. We often really like an idea because it answers medical need. There's a dynamic in the market. We like the founder. There's an innovation, IP. But the maturity is not quite there, and the team needs to be built a bit. So what we try to do is, I think we try to engage. We try to make it quite clear when we like an idea, we say it. And we try to engage with the people and advise them in quite a light way, but said, look, maybe you should think about complementing your team, and these are the things you should focus on. And we try to explain what are for us the prerequisites to look at the deal in a more active way. We try to do that. I mean, I don't know if we do it always very well, I admit, but at least once we start initiating the conversation, we try to have this dynamic.
So Samuel, should a founder entrepreneur put you on their mailing list so you are made aware of their achievement of milestones and other developments? Is that okay to do?
Yeah, I would say so for sure. I think, the original question, I wish this dynamic played out more in my specific case. So we're typically, as I said, investing in seed and Series A. Oftentimes we have CEOs come to us looking for financing for a Series A. And, I would love to have met them during the seed time, when they raised that seed, and just so I could get to know them. And I think one thing that just generally that applies, I think, in raising venture capital is I would look at it way more like relationship development as opposed to a transaction. We invest in people. That's every VC will tell you that. And certainly, with people that we are, trust and we think will do a good job and are good stewards of our capital. So, getting to know somebody, understanding what they, how they operate, it's a much better position to have that relationship in place. And then, here's what we've done over the last 6 months or the last 18 months, and then come and bring that Series A. If you were, fortunate enough to have made the connection during a seed and it didn't make sense for us at the time, but you felt like, there was a good potential fit, and maybe the fund said, this is interesting, come back to us during the Series A. I would for sure put you on the mailing list. I do look at those. I think those newsletters, whether they're quarterly or, biannually, I think they're very useful. It's, and so certainly be doing that, and also at all of these events. I'd encourage every CEO to be reaching out to, investors, especially if they're not raising money. So I think oftentimes people think, oh, well, if we don't have a round, why are we out here? Again, back to the relationship development. I love taking meetings with people that aren't raising capital, because then it's not an immediate, oh, I got to make a decision. It's let's actually evaluate the opportunity and track over time. So I would focus heavily on relationship development.
So Bruce, you always have to find something clever to add after these two have opined. Anything you'd like
I thought that was your job, but I agree with all of those comments. I think that if you get a pass based on stage, particularly if you've had a presentation and a face-to-face or a Zoom, you're definitely well in your rights to aim to get a little more specifics to make sure that that's just not a polite pass. And as my colleague said, there's nothing better than engaging with people when you don't really need anything from them. People really appreciate the opportunity to build relationships. I think the venture business is very much a relationship-driven business, and every venture player wants to feel like they're building a proprietary network and deal flow. So I think it's appreciated, but ultimately structuring interactions where the takeaway that you're delivering is we're executing on everything we promised we would do. That's a great foundation to build.
Yeah. Certainly it's good to build relationships with the VCs so they can get to know you over time, but you want to get to know them too.
No, absolutely.
Because they are going to be in your life.
Yep.
You're going to want them to fund you again or provide positive references to others in their network who may fund you in the future. And they may be on your boards as directors or observers. And you want to make sure that you can have an open, easy chemistry, transparency, directness, and good collaboration. So I would think of it as a two-way street, in fact. You're getting to know them just the same way.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I would really encourage you to get to know us. And we do due diligence on you, do due diligence on us. Because it's true, it's not a transaction, it's a relationship. We're going to be together for a very long time. We need to be able to have really difficult conversations sometimes. And honestly, if the chemistry is not there, it's not worth doing the deal with a certain type of VC. It's really critical. Yeah,
I agree.
And I would just add too, just a different angle on this. I think something that CEOs who are raising venture capital don't always think about this, but VCs are actually acutely aware of this dynamic because they have to raise money too. And so if you're raising money from LPs want 2, 3 years, even 5 years of experience getting to know a manager, especially if they're an emerging manager. And so, that obviously we're raising capital and deploying it. So the other half of our role, we're thinking about relationship development, and they're underwriting us as people. And so we're seeing it from that lens. And so we're in a similar spot and trying to do the same type of thing.
That's a good point. So far, I would take money from Celia. Bruce, I'm not so sure, but let's see how it goes. Okay. You still have a shot.
All right.
So let's say you like a company and you want to prefer a term sheet. Okay. Now it gets kind of serious. Like you're talking about really specific, difficult terms. And so what do you see as best practices and good behavior and bad behavior from your founder CEOs? Who at this stage don't have necessarily good board directors to advise them. So what can you share there about how to conduct oneself in the term sheet negotiation stage? We'll start with you, Bruce.
Yeah,
Please.
all right. Yeah.
Well, I think that two key words I would start off with are deal fatigue. I think you have to be very mindful that in any VC, like most counterparties, is really constantly assessing what the potential is of reaching a closing and how much time to allocate. And to Celia's point, whether there really is, an alignment of interest and chemistry. So it's important clearly to advocate strongly and to negotiate hard and strong for your interests, but there is an underlying dynamic and minuet, and I would, certainly be careful not to let lawyers, sort of grind out a long period of negotiating a term sheet, which is then going to be followed by a long period of negotiating definitive documents. And I think also it's, quite important to just focus on fairly limited list of key points, and to realize that you will actually be able to revisit a lot of the other points when it comes to definitive documents.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, negotiation, hopefully you have a good relationship going into it. And so it can be cordial throughout. I think I would say it boils down to two things in a negotiation. You're looking at valuation and control. I think everything else is less important. There are terms that are, negotiated that I think are not necessarily always worth negotiating. And so I think you want to have a focus on, especially if you feel like the relationship is strong and the, investor that you're working with is really trying to get a deal done, that there's certain things that are worth kind of fighting for, and there's certain things that are not worth fighting for. And I think you want to make sure you have a good legal team that are not, over engineering these term sheets, and racking up the legal fees. So I think, generally speaking, focus on the key things and don't worry as much about the stuff that aren't frankly as important.
It's the Americans don't like lawyers. That's one conclusion I can draw. Okay, Celia.
I think first of all, it's very different if you it's your first time you negotiate. And we've done a lot of new companies originating from academia. And I think it's a really hard moment because you've had all this, sometimes you've been interacting for 1, 2, 3 years, and at the end you do the deal and you have this very good relationship, and then suddenly, boom, this term sheet arrives. And it's a bit of a shock for the founders. They think, wow, they feel like it's an aggression for them. It's really hard. And it took us some time to understand that. And we thought, the best thing for me, my best advice is to say, get advice from people who've negotiated term sheets like this before, and make sure, you have the right lawyers, as you said, who are not over-engineering details, who will tell you what to focus on, what is market practice. Because honestly, if you don't have that, it can be a complete disaster because the lawyer can put some more oil on the fire, and it's really critical. But I think again, it's completely different for people who've already raised because they've gone through that. They know what is important, what isn't. But first time round, it is quite a strange crossroads, and you have to. We can try to manage that well as well by doing a lot of explanation, but they suddenly feel you on the other side of the table. You were walking together, and there's this moment where, of course, you're a little bit facing each other. So you have to overcome that, and if you do, I think you come out of it probably stronger.
Indeed, and for the founder, this is a brand new language. You
Yes.
deal with it all the time, many times a year, and there's an imbalance there. They're learning about liquidation preferences and participating preferred and all these things that are quite foreign to them, but are deeply important to the eventual returns that might flow their way. So I would encourage the founders to get smart on those things. Otherwise, they can be disadvantaged. And again, also, your lawyer works for you, right? So don't let them assert themselves too much. Get the deal done as a business person. You need the money to operate. Get the deal done. That has to be the mindset from the beginning.
Dave, I'd like to also address what sometimes can be a happy situation where you as a founder do have leverage, where you may have multiple term sheets or potentially competing strategic interests with a VC interest. And of course, you want to be able to play that card, and it's okay to play that card to let a VC know there's competition. Nothing focuses the mind better. But one thing that I have observed in several deals, and you do need to be careful about it, particularly if you're a serial entrepreneur who plans on tapping the VC community regularly, is to inject as much transparency as you can. Don't invest an enormous time negotiating a term sheet with a VC if you're simultaneously negotiating a deal with a strategic to sell the company early, and drop that on the VC at the last minute without any inkling that there's competition. Because ultimately, there is a very keen appreciation of closing risk amongst VCs who are leading deals in particular, because they're in getting to a term sheet. They're investing substantial amounts of certainly team hours and external consulting hours on initial diligence. So you don't want to leave anyone with a feeling that they've just been strung along as a stalking horse, but that, they were in a fair but fierce competition and they lost, but that will make them all the more anxious to invest in you next time.
Just pause. Any questions, any thoughts or arise? No, that's okay. And then when it comes to the syndicate formation, how much do you take on that responsibility as the lead to pull together that syndicate among other firms with whom you've collaborated in the past? And how much do you want the CEO to play an active role in recruiting additional investors? And in what ways does it vary? Does it really depend on the capabilities and network of the CEO? So you'll step in if he or she cannot? How do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you're right. It depends on the experience of the CEO. What we want is to end up with a good syndicate, and that means many things. The ability to, of course, reinvest in the company, but of course, you end up on the board, and it's the quality of the board and the quality of the people who are going to be around the table with the CEO, with independent board members, but also your peer investors. When you're in moments that are a little bit tricky, it's absolutely critical. So more than ever, we're extremely careful with whom we syndicate now. So we would be super open, of course, to every suggestion from the CEO, but we want to have our say. So I think the ideal thing is we bring people around the table and we make the choice together. It's very rare that we didn't agree on a syndicate with the CEO.
So what happens behind the curtain that the CEO doesn't see? Are you having calls with these potential syndicate members to ensure alignment around, let's say, the time horizon and the overall business strategy, the management talent? Like, how does this work? We never see it.
Yeah, so I would say from a lead perspective, I think, the syndicate building is bespoke every time. So in some cases, you'll have a CEO who's just incredibly well connected and they're going to build the syndicate themselves. And that's, one of the advantages. You know that CEO is going to be able to raise capital on a go-forward basis. And that's sometimes part of the appeal. And then in other cases, as the lead investor, you do need to make sure that you're, kind of getting that round coming together and closing. And so, kind of depending on where that minimum to close is, making sure that you can reach that. Because we don't really want a broken deal. That doesn't do anything for us. We're not super excited about doing those. As you pointed out, it's a waste of time and resources. So chances are, if we're issuing a term sheet, at least our perspective is that we want to get that deal done. So we will do what it takes to pull the syndicate together. And certainly that involves talking to people behind, without the CEO in the room. Oftentimes we have CEOs who introduce us to the other interested parties that we haven't necessarily gotten to know previously, just to make sure there's that alignment on, terms and, where the company's going and governance and all those things.
So Bruce, it's probably common when you're assessing a company, you look at the management team, you say, okay, I have confidence that this person can take the company to the next level, but I'm not so sure about their clinical leader, for example. How do you assess whether the CEO will accept your suggestions and maybe show the flexibility that's necessary to evolve the management team as the company evolves?
So it's clearly one of the most important judgment calls that any investor needs to make, and also a way in which a new venture investor can be helpful, because sometimes you need that external feedback and perspective. I've seen it play out in a variety of ways. I've seen deals which we've been involved with, where the replacement of a certain key management member, and often it is that clinical person, is actually a fairly express condition to the term sheet. Not always obviously outlined in the four corners of the term sheet, but a key part of the negotiation. Other times, of course, it's better for that conversation to happen after the investment and when the board is coming together. In terms of the conversation with the CEO himself or herself as to whether they're the right person to lead it to the next level, that's obviously a very sensitive conversation. I would say that generally doesn't happen before an early stage investment, but it's often part of the conversation about what the goals are for that founder or CEO. And I think VCs are trying to get a sense as to whether they are flexible to changing their role as the company changes.
Which is one of the reasons you want multiple touch points in the months leading up to the actual financing. Is this something that you openly discuss in your investment committee? Well, the CEO's, he's very smart, but he might be a bit difficult.
Oh gosh, yeah, because it's so central to the investment thesis that we will, the CEO, its ability or her ability to listen, to surround themselves, all of that, to build a strong team. But also we personally, I try to have that conversation with the founders, because I think it's dishonest to wait. If you've made that analysis, you have to share it. And for me, it's very important that you share it in a way to see how the person also responds. Is there some listening there? Is there some ability to take on board these comments? And for me, it's really critical because the best CEOs I've had, and I think that's probably common knowledge. I mean, it's people who are generally know themselves well and know how to surround themselves and are open to that type of discussion. But definitely, in value creation, there's clinical milestones, but there's team evolution.
Yeah, so you're entering the relationship with the transaction with no surprises, and you're being very forthcoming about the changes that you think should be made. You're then able to see how this CEO reacts in advance of the deal. I think that's a very fair and a good way to go.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, Celia is probably is probably one of the more transparent, taking one of the more transparent approaches and actually telling the CEO that maybe or opining on the situation in terms of the management team. I think too often investors will just walk. You won't even get that feedback. So I think as part of the management team, you need to be thinking through who are the folks that need to be around the table to get it to the next step. Because look, there's lots of great companies out there with amazing entrepreneurs that we're excited to back. And so if you have great technology, you have to have a great entrepreneur leading it, or else it's going to be a lot harder to get funded. So I think it's something to be proactive about to the extent that you can be. Because unfortunately, I mean, we see it as well back to the raising capital for VCs. We don't hear often why LPs will pass in our fund, right? And so that can be a reason, presumably, and same with raising VC from investors. That's often a big focus is the management team.
And we talked at the beginning about this is a two-way thing. You're assessing the VC just like they're assessing you. So one of the things I would assess is, can you help me with your network to attract talented people that I need for the next stage of the company's growth? I mean, that's an important role for you to play. So how should I do that? Like if Celia, everything you've said is perfect so far, obviously, but how would you convince me that Supernova can help me populate my management team for the next stage? Like, what would you respond if I
think one has to be very modest when it comes to hiring. It's one of the most difficult things to do. I think what we can do is first help them think about the profiles, maybe exchange on what Bruce was saying, different scenarios we've seen, because again, there's no absolute answer. There's many ways to take a company forward, and then we have some network, but we also need the help of headhunters. We do try to reach out to some networks. Sometimes it helps, but sometimes we just also need to go just.
And I see some headhunters in the room,
through people whose job it is and who do that extremely well. So we use headhunters quite a lot, actually.
The U.S. market is quite important in medtech. Just as a a venue for commercialization. Do you think that enough early stage European companies add U.S. management and director talent? It's a provocative question.
Sorry, could you?
Do you think that European companies at early stage add American management and directors early enough to prepare themselves for U.S. commercialization?
It's a good question. Probably not.
That's why I asked the question. I think that's one area of improvement potentially. Okay, we're about done here. Any more questions?
Tell us about the conversation with the CEOs and board directors.
So I think for most of the deals we do, it's an expectation that the CEO will be on the board of directors, and actually a negative if there's some reason why the CEO would not be appropriate for the board of directors. But I think that really picks up on the need for there to be conversations about what the CEO's role is, how the CEO sees, their trajectory, as a manager or as a founder. And, I think as noted by the panel, these are conversations that happen in small and large ways over a period of time as you really get to a close. But I think if at the point of the close, there's a feeling that the CEO shouldn't be on the board, that something's wrong from my
CEO
perspective.
needs to be on the board.
Yeah.
You're not the hired help. You contribute to the strategy of the company and interact with the investors as peers and partners. Non-negotiable. Get money from somebody else. Thank you very much. I think you're waving us. You want us to finish. Yeah? Okay. Is there another question? Yeah.
Some companies have a chairman that's different from CEO. Yeah. And what's your opinion of that? What does chairman do and does it help to do that?
You want to take that, Samuel?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think just quickly, I think in some cases, if it's a first time CEO that, is really technical and is growing into the role of becoming a, full executive, I think it's great to have a chairman. In some cases, I think there's multiple ways to skin the cat. I think they can be very useful. They don't always are needed though. So it just kind of depends on what the management team looks like.
Okay. Anything else? We'll wrap it up. Thank you so much. The attendance actually improved during the session.
Hey, how many days?
This must have been good.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.